before you even knew what breath was, before your eyes ever opened to this world. Your soul had already made the most sacred of choices: to return. But why? Why would an eternal being, a soul forged in light, choose to fall again into pain, loss, forgetting? Why come back here, to this imperfect world, this fragile skin, this ache that never quite leaves? What if the answer has been hidden in your dreams, in the ache you can't name, in the moments that feel like déjà vu, but hit too deep to be coincidence? You are not imagining it. You are remembering. Because only some return. And those who do so for reasons that would unravel you if you truly knew. The story of reincarnation is not a ladder. It is not a punishment. It is not a mistake to be corrected. It is a spiral, sacred, alive, mysterious. And somewhere within that spiral, you chose this life. Not because it was easy, but because it would burn away what no longer belonged. Because it would awaken what you forgot was sleeping inside you. You see, souls do not return for pleasure. They return for purpose. There is a moment, in the hush between lifetimes, where the soul stands before what some call the Great Council, others the mirror of karma, and some just call it the silence. In that moment, the soul is shown the entire arc of its becoming, not in years, not in events, but in energy, in truth. You witness the vibrations you've set into motion, the promises you kept, and the ones you left trailing like loose threads in wind. And then, you are asked only one thing. Do you wish to return? There is no command, no force, no judgment, only the choice. But make no mistake, this is not a light decision, because the soul knows what it means to return, to forget, to bleed, to be born inside of a body that aches and a mind that doubts. And still, some souls say yes, not for themselves alone, but for others. Some return to heal a family line broken by centuries of silence. Some return to carry love to a place where love has never yet lived. Some come back to forgive what once broke them in another skin. And some return simply to remember. You may wonder, does every soul reincarnate? Some complete their journey in fewer lives? Some never leave the higher realms at all, and some choose to become guides rather than walkers. The soul's path is not linear. It bends, it waits, it expands beyond logic. But those who do return, they carry with them the vibration of everything they've ever been. That is why, even as a child, you may have felt older than your age. Why certain places felt familiar before you'd ever been there. Why some people, upon meeting, felt like reunions, not introductions. This is the residue of memory that survives even the veil. Because while the body forgets, the soul remembers. It remembers the shape of the pain it never finished healing. It remembers the name of the one it promised to find again. It remembers the vow made in the space between worlds, and that remembering pulls it back. But not all souls are called equally. Some return out of deep karmic entanglement, not as punishment, but as participation in the tapestry they helped weave. Others return not to resolve karma, but to serve, to anchor light, to hold frequency, to assist in the evolution of others who have forgotten who they are. These are the old souls who walk with quiet eyes and tired hearts, who often feel misplaced in a world that moves too fast and speaks too loud. They did not come here to escape pain. They came to transmute it. And they chose this world, with all its cruelty and its kindness, its chaos and its color, because this is where the alchemy happens. This is where the soul earns its wings, not through retreat, but through immersion. And yet, some souls hesitate. Even now, hovering just beyond the veil, there are those who are watching, waiting, not quite ready to fall again into matter, because they remember too well the cost, the forgetting, the loneliness of waking in a world that doesn't yet speak your language. And so they wait until the vibration is right, until the right parents are aligned, until the soul they need to meet has also returned. You see, reincarnation is not a solo act. It is a symphony. No soul returns alone. Contracts are made in the light, agreements to meet again as parent, child, enemy, lover, friend, not to repeat the same patterns, but to break them open, to rewrite them in love. And you may be carrying one of those contracts even now, a pull towards someone you can't explain, a longing that outlives logic, a pain that feels borrowed. It is the soul remembering what it came back to complete. And if you felt it, that strange ache, that invisible thread, then you already know. Reincarnation is not about escape. It's about return. And return is always about remembering what you came here to do. This is only the beginning. And so the soul returns, but not all at once. The journey into incarnation is not a single leap. It is a descent, a slow, spiraling fall from pure presence into form. First comes the stirring, the magnetic pull toward a certain life, a pulse in the eternal that says, now. Then comes the vision, not of a face or a country or a name, but of a frequency. The soul feels the vibration of its future family, its future body, its future pain. It does not choose blindly. It chooses exactly what will awaken it. Sometimes that means entering ease, but more often, it means entering fire. Because fire is what forges remembrance. And the soul knows. You do not grow where you are comfortable. You grow where you are cracked open. That's why so many of the reincarnated are born into chaos, into grief, into systems that do not see them, not as punishment, as precision. Because what looks like dysfunction from the outside might be the exact soil a soul needs to bloom. This is the mystery of karma, not a ledger of reward and retribution, but a web of resonance. Karma is not a jailer. It is a compass. It doesn't punish. It reminds. It brings the soul back into contact with the energies it once put into motion, not for suffering's sake, but for integration. You may have hurt someone 100 years ago. You may now feel their pain in your own chest, not because the universe is cruel, but because the soul seeks balance. It longs to understand, not just to act, to feel the effect of what it once caused. And so, it returns. But reincarnation is not always about fixing the past. Sometimes, a soul returns for one moment, to say a word, to hold a stranger, to birth a child who will one day shift the world. Not every life is long. Not every return is loud. Some souls incarnate for a single ripple, and that ripple is enough. You may have met them, the ones who feel ancient even in youth, the ones who die young but leave behind light that flickers in everyone they touched. Some souls come for brief brilliance, because their contract was never about time, it was about impact. And others come with burdens they cannot name. They are born heavy, not with memory, but with echo. They carry grief that feels older than their bones, fears that make no sense, longings for places they've never seen. That's the fingerprint of reincarnation. Because while the mind forgets, the body remembers. Trauma embeds itself in the tissue of the soul, not to torment, but to teach. and the soul will return again and again to the source of the wound, not to suffer it, but to finally transform it. This is the sacred courage of those who reincarnate, not just to relive pain, but to walk through it awake. That's what makes the reincarnated different. Not that they know more, but that they feel more. They feel too much. They cry without knowing why. They sense the energies in a room before a word is spoken, because they've been here before, and their nervous system carries lifetimes of knowing how the world breaks and how it heals. That is why so many feel out of place, like they're too much, or not enough, or never quite at home. Because the soul remembers home, and this world still doesn't feel like it. But even that is part of the return, to bring the frequency of the true home into this one, to become a walking bridge between what has been and what could be. And not every soul that returns does so on their own. Some travel in clusters, soul families, moving through lifetimes like constellations. You've met them. The stranger who felt familiar, the enemy you couldn't stop loving, the teacher who changed your life with one sentence. These are not accidents. These are reunions. Because the soul doesn't just choose what to return to, it chooses who. And some bonds are older than time. There are souls you have met again and again, in different roles, different names, different bodies, but always the same pull. Because reincarnation is not a reset, it's a continuation. You don't start from zero. You carry what came before, in dreams, in fears, in talents you never learned. That's why some children play piano like masters at age 5. Why some people speak languages they've never studied. Why a smell, a song, a piece of clothing can unlock a memory that was never part of this life. You didn't learn that here. You brought it with you. And buried in you, beneath the layers of this lifetime, is a soul that has walked other roads. Roads that still whisper beneath your skin. But why? Why would a soul choose to come back again after everything it has endured? The answer is simple. Because there's something here that cannot be found anywhere else. Not in the angelic realms. Not in the halls of light. Only here. Here, you get to become. Not in perfection, but in vulnerability, in heartbreak, in the messy, aching miracle of human love. To be human is to be the place where divinity chooses to break itself open, so that it can feel itself more fully. And that is why the soul returns, to feel, to remember, to turn even suffering into sacred fire. And perhaps you chose this life for that very reason. But what about those who don't return? What about the souls who look upon this world and whisper, "Not this time"? Because just as some leap eagerly into form, others remain. They hover in the higher realms, watching the wheel turn, and choose silence over motion. Not out of fear, but from completion. Because not all souls need to come back. Some have remembered fully. Some have done the work. They have loved deeply, lost profoundly, forgiven endlessly, and walked through fire enough times to no longer need its burn. These are the elders of the soul realm. Not necessarily old in time, but full in evolution. They are the ones who walk beside God, not as worshippers, but as co-dreamers. And yet, even among them, some still choose to return. Why? Because compassion overrides comfort. Because they feel the ache of earth and cannot watch it suffer without offering their light. These are the ones who come back not for themselves, but for us. The bodhisattvas, the sacred volunteers, the ones who dive into density to pull others toward the surface. They are born into poverty, into war zones, into silence that screams, and yet they bring peace, laughter, healing. Not because they were given ease, but because they remembered it in the middle of pain. These are the reincarnated ones who are not bound by karma, but moved by service. They return because the earth called, and they answered. You might be one of them. Have you ever looked at suffering and felt it in your bones? Felt a grief that wasn't yours, but lived in your chest like a second heartbeat? Have you ever touched someone's pain and known exactly how to soothe it, as if you'd done it before, in another time, another face? That is not empathy alone. That is memory. You've walked this road before, and you chose to walk it again, not for glory, not for karma, but for love. This is one of the highest forms of reincarnation, when the soul returns not out of need, but out of knowing. Knowing that presence alone can heal. Knowing that light, when carried through shadow, becomes transformational. But there is another reason souls choose to return. Not for others, but for something undone. A promise made. A thread left untied. A truth that never found its voice. Because in the architecture of the soul, every vow echoes across time. A life cut short, a relationship left in rupture, a dream never lived. These are not just regrets, they are invitations. The soul remembers, not with shame, but with longing. Longing to finish what was started, to speak the truth it once silenced, to forgive the person it once hated, to stand where it once fell, and so it returns. Reincarnation is not always about evolution. Sometimes it's about completion, tying the last knot in a story that spanned centuries. That's why some people are born with inexplicable obsessions, a passion for justice with no context, a fear of drowning despite never learning to swim, a fascination with a country they've never visited. These are not coincidences. They are breadcrumbs from a life left half-written. And when the soul recognizes the path again, it does not hesitate. It steps forward, not just to remember, but to fulfill. And sometimes reincarnation isn't about the past at all. It's about the future. Some souls choose to return not because of where they've been, but because of where the world is going. They see a future shimmering on the horizon, one of unity, of awakening, of healing. And they say, I want to help build that. These are the ones born ahead of their time. They challenge systems. They question traditions. They speak truths that make others uncomfortable. Not because they're rebellious, but because they've seen what's coming. And their soul can't stay silent. They were born for the shift. And if you felt out of place your entire life, if you've looked around and wondered why no one else sees what you see, you're not broken. You're early. You came to light a fire that hasn't fully caught yet, to sing a song the world hasn't learned how to hear, to walk paths that haven't yet been built. And sometimes that feels lonely, but it's not. Because the ones like you, the ones who reincarnated for this time, are starting to find each other. The soul recognizes its echoes in another, and when it does, something ancient stirs. Not friendship, not attraction, remembrance. Like two notes from the same song finally playing in harmony again. This too is reincarnation, not just the soul returning to earth, but returning to its tribe. Because even light needs reflection, even purpose needs witness, and no soul, however evolved, was ever meant to awaken alone. So when a soul chooses to return, how does it happen? What really unfolds in that sacred moment between the decision and the descent? Because reincarnation is not a fall, It is not random. It is not forced. It is a ceremony, a preparation older than time. Long before a soul re-enters a body, it enters the chamber of choice. Not a physical place, but a dimension of soul mapping, where destiny is not dictated, but woven. Here, the soul stands in the presence of its guides, its elders, its council of light. Not judges, not punishers, but witnesses of truth. And together, they review the soul's journey, not as success or failure, but as experience. Every moment lived is shown like light through glass. The joy, the pain, the missed chances, the sacred victories. And from this clarity, a new blueprint begins. The soul is not told what to do. It is asked, what now? What still calls to you? What still aches within you? What are you ready to embody that you couldn't before? This is where the soul's next life begins. Not with a command, but with a yes. Yes, I'm ready to love again. Yes, I'm ready to forgive what once broke me. Yes, I'm ready to serve, to build, to speak. But intention alone is not enough, because Earth is not random. Every detail of incarnation matters. Which body, which family, which time period, which geography, which language, which wound. Nothing is accidental, because nothing is wasted. In this chamber, the soul begins to shape its coming form, and it starts with the lessons. What am I still learning? Is it self-worth, compassion, boundaries, humility, courage? Each lesson becomes an energetic frequency that guides the soul toward the right conditions. A father who leaves to teach trust in self. A mother who wounds to teach forgiveness beyond logic. A lover who betrays to teach discernment through the fire. This is not punishment. This is sacred precision, because the soul doesn't seek comfort, it seeks growth. And once the key lessons are chosen, the soul chooses the companions. Yes, the people. Every soul that matters in your life was seen before birth. The ones who will hurt you, the ones who will hold you, the ones who will awaken something in you no one else could. Some of them are souls you've met before, from other lives, other bodies, other names. But the bond remains, and you agree together to meet again, to play new roles, to trigger old wounds, to offer new healing. These are called soul contracts, sacred pacts signed not with ink, but with intention. Some of them are gentle, others feel like war, but all of them are bound by love, even when they break you, because sometimes the soul who hurts you most is the one who loves you deepest on the other side. It's hard to hear that. It doesn't make the pain okay, but it does make it sacred. And once the soul has chosen its lessons, its companions, its contracts, it chooses the veil. Because to incarnate fully, you must forget. Not forever, but enough to make the journey real. Imagine starting a game already knowing every outcome. There would be no growth, no surrender, no discovery. So the soul agrees to forget its wings, to forget it is light, to forget it chose. And in that forgetting, the story begins. The soul does not fear this forgetting, because deep within, it plants seeds of memory that awaken at just the right moment. A book that stirs your spirit, a person who feels like home, a loss that shatters your ego but softens your heart. These are the soul's breadcrumbs, clues it left for you to find the way back. Because reincarnation is not exile, it is a spiral. You fall into form so you can rise again, stronger, deeper, wiser. And when the soul is ready, when the lessons are chosen, the contracts sealed, the veil embraced, it stands at the threshold, the moment just before descent. and there it breathes in the memory of God. One last breath, before forgetting. One last light, before skin. And then, the leap. And then, the leap. You don't fall like a body. You descend like a whisper, like light threading itself through matter. There is no scream, no words, only a hush as the soul enters the womb. Not all at once. It comes in layers, gently, intentionally. Because incarnation is not a door you slam open. It is a threshold you bow before. At first, you are barely there. A flicker, a pulse of presence. You hover just beyond the veil of form, weaving your way into the energy of the tiny body taking shape. You feel its cells multiplying. You sense the heartbeat, even before it's heard. Not like a human hears, but like a soul feels. A soft thrum of life. Not yours yet, but soon to be. And here's what no one tells you. You begin to feel everything. The mother's emotions become waves against your being. Her joy, her fear, her uncertainty, her love. They reach you like tides lapping at the shore of your becoming. This is your first classroom, not a school, not a book, but the womb. A sacred temple where the soul and the flesh begin their sacred dance. You do not yet move fingers, but you move energy. You begin to imprint yourself into the forming brain, the spine, the lungs, the skin. Each breath the mother takes is a signal. Each beat of her heart a code, and you receive it all. Some souls come in fully, quickly, with urgency. Others linger, entering gradually over months, sometimes even until the final weeks before birth. Why? Because not every soul feels ready to land fully in the density of the body. Some wait until the vessel is more formed. Some need time to adjust, to remember how to forget. And all the while, you're not just entering a body, you're entering a story, a lineage, a bloodline, a karma. Because the family you chose, it wasn't random. Its wounds, its gifts, its shadows, its light, they match something in you. Not perfectly, but precisely. Even if you later grow up wondering, why was I born to these people? Even if the pain feels unjust, even if you never felt safe, know this: your soul did not choose suffering. It chose the opportunity to transform it. Because sometimes, the greatest alchemy happens in the very place that seems most broken. And so you enter the bloodline not just to receive its legacy, but to rewrite it. To bring healing where silence lived. To bring light where shame once hid. To awaken gifts that slept for generations. And that journey begins not at birth, but before. In the womb, you're already dreaming. Not like the dreams of sleep, but the dreams of the soul. Visions, memories, echoes of lives before this one. The faces of those you've loved. The moments of power or pain from past lives. They flicker through you like distant songs. And then, birth. A moment so violent to the body, but so sacred to the soul. The pressure, the contraction, the passage through flesh and fear and blood. It feels like being torn from heaven. And in a way, it is. Because that cry, your first sound, is not just a signal to the world that you've arrived. It's a signal to your soul that the forgetting has begun. The veil wraps tighter. The memories begin to fade. You forget your guides. You forget the stars. You forget why you came. But somewhere, deep inside, a spark remains. And that spark is what we call intuition. The whisper that says, there's more than this. Even as a child, you feel it. You look into the sky and cry and don't know why. You draw pictures of things you've never seen. You feel things others don't. You ask questions no one can answer. And the world tells you, stop imagining. Be realistic. Grow up. But your soul doesn't forget. It only sleeps. Until something, someday, wakes it again. Maybe it's a moment of heartbreak that cracks your chest open. Maybe it's music that stirs a memory of a temple long gone. Maybe it's a stranger's eyes that feel too familiar. And suddenly, the veil thins. You don't remember everything, but you feel that you've been here before, because you have. And part of your journey in this life is to awaken to that truth, not to escape the world, but to walk it as someone who remembers what most forget. That you are not this name, not this body, not this story. You are the soul who chose it, and somewhere inside you, you still remember why. But even after birth, the soul does not fully arrive all at once. There are moments, days, months, even years, where it slowly integrates into the body, like light sinking into water. You may have seen it in a child's eyes, a sudden depth, as if a curtain lifted and someone older stepped forward behind their gaze. That is not imagination, that is soul. And yet, even as the soul settles into form, it begins the long forgetting. Because to remember everything, the pain, the lessons, the lifetimes, the loves lost and gained, would fracture the fragile brain of a newborn. So the remembering is hidden beneath symbols. You see a place you've never been, and your heart skips, because somewhere it remembers walking there. You meet a stranger, and something ancient within you softens, because you've touched their soul before. You fall in love with a language, a song, a tradition, and you don't know why. But your soul does. Because life as we know it is not just a path forward, it's a spiral. And in that spiral, you will cross yourself again and again. And the ones you have known before, they will return too. Some as guides, some as challenges, some as mirrors so perfect. They reveal the part of your soul you've forgotten to love. These are not just people. They are contracts, soul contracts, written not in ink, but in light, signed not with words, but with willingness. Before returning, you chose these encounters. You chose to meet the mother who would shape your nervous system. You chose the heartbreak that would shatter your ego. You chose the teacher whose eyes would awaken your inner fire. Not as punishment, but as precision. Because your soul knew growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in contrast. You were not here to avoid suffering. You were here to transmute it, to touch the shadow and turn it into gold. And in that transmutation, you begin to remember. Bit by bit, pain by pain, the veil thins. You read something that feels like it was written just for you. You meet someone who speaks your soul's language without trying. You hear a voice in meditation that feels more real than your own thoughts. That is remembering. And through that remembering, your path begins to unfold differently. You no longer chase what the world says matters. You start to feel what your soul is asking for. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's movement. Sometimes it's to let go of the life you built for your ego, so your spirit can finally breathe. And when you do that, when you live as one who remembers, you become a magnet. You begin to attract the people, places, and events that were always meant to find you, once you were ready. This is when soul family shows up, not always with joy, sometimes with friction. Because soul family doesn't come to entertain you. They come to evolve you. They hold mirrors. They press your wounds. They love you in ways that break you open. Because somewhere, before this life, you asked them to, and they said yes. You might recognize them by the feeling in your chest, like home, or fire, or fear mixed with awe. You might not always like them, but you'll feel them. Because reincarnation is not just an individual journey, it is woven in webs. We travel in soul clusters, circling lifetimes like dancers, sometimes lovers, sometimes rivals, sometimes strangers who feel like everything you've ever lost. And as you walk this life, you will meet those you've met before. Some come back because of karmic threads still tied. Some because of promises made in lifetimes long forgotten. Some because they love you too deeply to stay away. And some come back not for you, but with you. Because reincarnation is not just about healing, it's about service. You didn't just return to learn, you returned to lift, to love, to create something only you can create because of who you've been and who you are becoming. This is the quiet power of the reincarnated soul. You don't always have words for it. You don't always have memories, but you carry a pulse inside you, a knowing beyond knowledge. It wakes you at night. It stirs you in moments of stillness. It speaks in symbols and synchronicities. And if you follow it, if you trust its rhythm, you will begin to live not just as a human, but as a soul in motion. A soul who said yes, again and again, to return, to remember, to rise. But not all souls return endlessly. There comes a time for every soul when the cycle begins to slow. The lessons become fewer, the karmic ties grow thinner, and something sacred begins to stir from within. A whisper that says, "You are almost complete." You see, reincarnation is not infinite. It is not a loop without exit. It is a spiral, and all spirals rise. Each life is a turn, a rotation upward through shadow and light, toward a center that has no name but truth. So why do some souls keep returning? Life after life, breath after breath? Sometimes it's unfinished business. A soul still entangled in guilt, desire, regret. Not because they're bad, but because they still believe they're broken. So they return. To love where they once harmed. To forgive where they once hated. To understand where they once turned away. Other times, it's devotion. A soul so moved by love for others that it chooses to come back. Not for itself, but for those still struggling in the dark. These are the bodhisattvas, the awakened ones who delay their final liberation to lift another's burden. You felt them. The stranger who looked you in the eyes and something in you melted. The healer who touched your life not with hands, but with presence. The friend who entered your life at its breaking point and held space like they'd done it for lifetimes. That's not luck, that's legacy. Because sometimes, a soul returns not out of need, but out of offering. And these souls, the ones who remember more, they begin to live differently. They walk slower, speak softer, love deeper. They are not perfect, but they are present, and their presence is the gift. But even these ancient ones must one day choose. Will I come back again? Or will I release the wheel? And here's where the mystery deepens. Some souls, even after reaching great levels of awareness, still choose to return. Not because they must, but because there is one thing stronger than completion: compassion. There are souls who have walked through the fires of suffering again and again, and finally reached the quiet shore of liberation, only to turn back around, to reach for one more, to light one more torch, to whisper to one more soul still sleeping in the dark, "You are not alone." These are the hidden saints, not the ones in temples or scriptures, but the ones in cafes, in classrooms, in crisis shelters, the ones whose very life is a prayer. They do not preach, they emanate. And if you've ever felt a love in someone's presence that made you cry without knowing why, you've met one. You see, reincarnation is not just about personal evolution, it's about collective elevation. Because we don't rise alone, we rise together. And some souls, in their infinite kindness, choose to return to carry the ones who cannot yet walk. They are the bridge. And sometimes, so are you. Because the truth is, you may not remember all your lives, but your soul does. It remembers the mother you were, the warrior you became, the monk who starved in silence, the lover who died too young. It remembers the vow you once made under a tree, to return until love was all that remained. And maybe that vow is still guiding you. Maybe that's why you feel so deeply, why you ache for a world you've never seen, why you weep for the suffering of strangers, why beauty makes your chest hurt. Because your soul has seen so much, and it came back not to escape, but to embody something sacred, to make love visible in a world still healing from forgetting. So who gets reincarnated? Not everyone, not always. But you did. And you're not here by mistake. You are a soul who chose again. And with that choice, you carry a light only you can share. Not because you're better, but because you remember. Even if you can't name it, your soul remembers the agreement. The one where you said yes to another breath, another chance, another sacred descent into matter. And now, you are here, awake, listening, wondering, and maybe, just maybe, ready. Not every soul returns. Some have completed what they came to do. Not just the karmic lessons, but the deeper task, to become love in human form. And when that task is done, when the pain has been transmuted, when forgiveness has been embodied, when the self has been emptied and filled with light, the soul does not return. Not because it escapes the world, but because it has become part of the world itself. It watches through clouds. It blesses through intuition. It dances in the laughter of children it will never meet. These souls have gone home, but even they are not gone. Because here is the final truth. No soul is ever truly separate. Not the ones who return. Not the ones who don't. Not the ones who were never born. Not the ones who left too soon. We are all threads of the same divine fabric, woven across lifetimes, woven beyond time. You may have been the seeker in one life, the teacher in another, the villain, the healer, the quiet presence that changed everything with a single touch. And now, in this life, you're being called again. Not just to wonder who gets reincarnated, but to remember why you did. Because you are not just a character in this life. You are a soul on a vast journey. And something brought you here, to this exact breath, to this exact video, to this sacred remembering. What if this moment was part of your plan all along? What if this was your soul's way of whispering, now is the time to awaken, to step beyond surviving, to step into serving, not from duty, but from remembrance. Because once you remember who you are, you can never go back to sleep. And suddenly, that pain you carried makes sense. That longing has direction. That strange pull to certain places, people, and paths. They all become signs. You begin to notice the ones you've walked with before. You begin to feel your own presence from lifetimes past watching you with love. You recognize that some of the people who hurt you most came not to break you, but to awaken something deeper. That every loss carried a hidden vow, that every love was an ancient reunion. And most of all, you begin to see yourself not as this name, this face, this life, but as a soul who has walked through fire, who has carried light through darkness, who has wept across centuries and still chose to return with open hands. And if you're wondering why you came back again, let me offer you this. Maybe you returned to remind someone else who they are, to hold a child who once held you, to forgive the one you once were, to break the chain your ancestors could not, to become the answer to a prayer whispered 600 years ago. Or maybe you came back because love asked, and your soul said yes, not for the reward, not for perfection, but because you knew that even one small act of kindness in the right moment could echo across lifetimes. So who gets reincarnated? The brave, the compassionate, the unfinished, the devoted, the souls who are still sculpting themselves into something sacred. And you are one of them. You always were. That feeling that something has followed you through time. It was not your imagination. It was your own soul walking beside you whispering, "We've done this before, and we're doing it again. This time, with more love." So now the question changes. It is no longer, who gets reincarnated, but rather, who do you choose to become, now that you remember? Because reincarnation is not just something that happens to you. It is a choice you make again and again to bring more light into this world. And that choice begins with you right now. Take a breath, feel your feet on the ground, and whisper softly to the soul within you, "I remember, I choose, I return, with purpose." Because this time, you are not here to forget. You are here to awaken. And by watching this, by feeling this, by remembering this, you already have. Thank you for remembering. If this message stirred something ancient within you, you are not alone. Others are remembering too. Let them find this message. Let them feel your light. Like, comment, and share this video, not as an algorithmic task, but as a soul offering. Because someone, somewhere, is waiting for a sign that they're not crazy for feeling this deeply. Be that sign. And if you wish to continue this sacred remembering, subscribe to Arcane Decode. We are only just beginning to uncover what your soul has always known.